I mentioned earlier how obsolete frameworks like the 4 Ps and the Myers-Briggs personalities stick around much longer than they should. And the reason is because they're radically simplified. So the very fact that they're simple is the reason that they go viral, that they're memorable, that they stick around longer than they should. So there are other cases of radical simplicity that we see in the market, in advertising, in books, etc., where the content is actually wrong or is wrong a lot of the time, but still it becomes kind of the mainstream attitude towards things, or things that become very popular. A great example is this guy, Simon Sinek. You've probably seen him on YouTube somewhere, or maybe you've read his books. He's very popular for a video where he radically simplifies what it is to be a millennial and why millennials are the way they are. And it's not really data driven. And he makes these radically simple statements. So here's an example. You don't hire for skills, you hire for attitude. You can always teach skills. So, yeah, okay, maybe there are some cases where this is true, but let's look at reality here. You should hire for skills. My first hire, I actually made this mistake. I hired somebody who had a great attitude but didn't have the skills because I was under the impression that we'd be able to teach this person, and I ended up having to let the person go. So that kind of advice is not always very relevant, but it doesn't really matter because this guy is a genius when it comes to marketing communications. Okay, he knows what Madison Avenue does to get into people's heads, and it's making radically simple statements that don't need to be correct. In fact, some of the statements that go viral or become very popular are not just simple, but they're actually saying the opposite of what people expect. It's a trick. It's a trick because when things are the opposite of what you expect, you're surprised and you remember them more. He has other popular content, start with why, which I think is often very bad advice. You shouldn't start with why you're creating a product. You should start with the customer and what the customer gets, where the customer value proposition starts, not with where your company starts. Leaders eat last. Okay, yeah, maybe there's cases where that makes sense. But my point of doing this is not to criticize Simon. In fact, it's to praise him that he knows what people want to hear. And what they want to hear is radically simplified statements that are a bit surprising or counterintuitive. And you can use this because you need to remember that people are bombarded with messages, particularly today. They're overloaded with information. So in competitive markets, especially like entertainment, the way that you stand out is through radical simplification. Now, if you're in a non-competitive market, you're in a super, super niche, you don't necessarily need to do that. You don't need to come up with some radically simple thing to kind of bust through the clutter. You can do a more sophisticated, informed, data-backed statement or headline to get attention.